this is Ayla again. I have now a very special guest today, and we are speaking English, as you see. She can also speak a little Finnish, but we decided to do this in English today. So welcome to our company, and our guest, she is called Katie Mayfield, and you're very welcome to this interview.
Thank you.
And would you like to introduce yourself shortly at the beginning?
Sure. Well, I'm laughing a little thinking about if we had done this interview in Finnish because it would be very short. But yeah, as you said, my name is Katie Mayfield. We met through the association called Flower Rescue ry, which I founded about 5.5 years ago, and you have volunteered as a flower fairy, a kukkakeiju for Flower Rescue.
Yes.
And that's how we met, and it's nice of you to invite me to be here today.
Okay, as I said, you're very welcome, and this is my first interview in English, and I'm very happy to be able to do it. And I especially wanted you to be here in an interview because the flower rescue business is very interesting. I would like to know how you first got interested in it.
Well, in the flower rescuing, I became interested in this idea of sort of repurposing flowers for good causes. Actually, when I encountered an organization in Oregon in the US where we were living before we came here to Finland. This organization was called the Bloom Project, and they had it was a not-for-profit, and their motto was to take surplus flowers from the flower industry. There's a lot of flowers grown and sold in Oregon, but this organization was taking those surplus flowers and cleaning them up and donating them on to good causes. I think in the case of the Bloom Project, most of the flowers were being donated to hospice and palliative care patients and centers. And having been a long-time flower lover and having actually decided maybe a decade before that I wasn't cut out to be a florist, I thought volunteering for the Bloom Project would be a really nice way to keep myself in flowers and do something nice for the community. And as it turned out, I wasn't able to really volunteer with them. My schedule was too busy, but I had their model in mind. And then sort of a circuitous path later, which we can talk more about too, I ended up working for this flower wholesaler here in Finland. And my job basically was to bring in new stock, bring in new flowers and get rid of old flowers at the wholesaler, which meant throwing a lot of flowers away every week, some of which really were trash, but others of which were quite lovely still. And so I thought about that Bloom Project model, and I thought, well, why shouldn't we try something like that here? Taking this surplus, cleaning it up, and donating it on to good causes. So that's the idea was inspired by Bloom Project and came to be here in Finland because I had a very large and very real flower waste problem in front of me.
And was this quite were you a pioneer, or were there other people doing the same thing here already?
Well, here in Finland there were a couple of other projects. So Flower Rescue started in 2018, and there were already a couple of projects. One was called Kukkaenkelit, and that was started by a florist who wanted to donate all of the waste after her events. She did a lot of big events and saw that there was a lot of hävikki after these events, and so she started donating that. There was another organization that now they're called Kukkis. They actually sell the hävikki flowers. So those two were already in existence in Helsinki, but I think Flower Rescue became the first kind of full-time project looking to find and then donate the surplus flowers. And I think Kukka Enkelit still happens when that florist has time. And this cookies is still ongoing today, so they call themselves a hävikki kukkakauppa. But of course our models are a little bit different because at Flower Rescue we always donate the flowers, whereas their business model is to sell the flowers.
Okay. Yes, I think your business idea is perfect. It's perfect. You know, doing something just for you're just doing something you want to do. You're not getting any profit. You must have some other job to get by. May I ask you what this is?
Well, actually, so the Flower Rescue model is we're a not-for-profit association, and for the first 3.5 years, it was all voluntary. So I was still working at this Kukatukku on the side. But about 2 years ago, we got our first grant funding. So I think in Finnish, this apuraha, which included some salary money for me and for Johanna, who you met, who is our program coordinator for the Kukkia Kaikille program. So that's how we get by. And certainly this is, I mean, anytime you start a not-for-profit, especially in Finland, you don't plan to earn a big salary. But it's been, you know, in the beginning when Flower Rescue started, I wondered, is this worth setting up? You know, is it worth creating a permanent organization around this, or could this always be a purely voluntary project? And in the beginning, we were 3 founders: myself, a sustainable florist called Margot, and then one of my dear friends who's still involved with Flower Rescue named Minna. She's a serial entrepreneur and very busy. And we had a lot of conversations in the beginning about, well, should we try to actually build a real organization around this? Like, does there need to be some kind of permanent organizational structure to keep this work going? And we decided that in the beginning, yes, there should be, to gather resources, both people resources and financial resources around solving this flower waste problem. But actually our goal long term would be to work ourselves out of a job. So at Flower Rescue, our mission is to address and spark dialogue about waste and the other sustainability issues in the floral industry, and also to connect people through the beauty and joy of flowers. And we think that if we're successful in that mission, that what we'll actually do is teach communities anywhere how to identify and rescue and distribute flower waste to good causes in their communities. And then we shouldn't have to do this forever. So that's a bit of a roundabout answer to your question, but for now we are lucky to have received funding from the city of Helsinki and from STEA, which is, you know, I think the funding arm of the Sosiaali- ja terveysministeri. And we have 3-year funding from STEA and 2 years from the city of Helsinki. And our hope actually after that is that we can go back to being primarily volunteer driven. The goal is not to, you know, make ourselves so necessary that we would like to become unnecessary, because we would like to give the communities the tools to, like I said, identify and rescue and then repurpose these flowers.
I think it's a good time for that now, because all the environmental questions, the climate change and everything, they are so up to date. Everybody's speaking about them, and all the political leaders are in for the green values.
Oh, well, not quite all of them.
Not all of them.
We would like a few more of them to be in.
But you should have seen the beginning. There was one green party,
right,
and they were laughed at practically. There were maybe 2 or 3 persons, and then it started from nothing, and now everybody is for the green. Almost everybody is for the green values. And
actually, so, I like that perspective, that it used to be a niche issue,
indeed.
And now it has to be part of everyone's platform. And even if they are against green values, it's part of the platform to be against it. Like, you're right that every party is talking about this.
So it has been recognized that the green values exist, as you say. And that's already a big advancement for everybody.
True.
So, and they are even competing who's the greenest. So I think nowadays maybe the greens are not the greenest anymore. You might be, there might be some party which is even more green. But anyway, I would like to know, why did you choose Finland to come to? This is a very personal question, I guess.
Well, it's funny to me in a lot of reasons, because when I first came to Finland, it was to get a master's degree in, I'm from the School of Economics, but it was a business degree. And everybody in the US said, you know, Americans think that they're the kings of capitalism and business, and why would you go to a socialist country to study business?
Oh no.
And I said, well, because the education's free and I can't afford it here. But then, you know, secondly, it does seem a bit funny to come to Finland, which is, you know, not a huge producer or consumer of flowers, to work in the flower business. But like many things in life, I think sometimes these paradoxes have the best results. So in the beginning, well, my partner is Finnish American, and he did his military service in Finland in 2013, and then after that, he had never lived here before, but he came back to our life in the U.S. and said, hey, I think we should try to live in Finland at some point. And we were both interested in getting, we both had bachelor's degrees in the U.S., but we were interested in higher education and getting master's degrees, and we were both working for really small nonprofits in the U.S. and thought that maybe we can't really afford graduate school. So with this kind of dual purpose to get more education and spend some time getting to know his heritage in Finland, we started looking at applying to master's degree programs here. And in the end, when it was time to come, like I applied in 2015 to this master's degree program at Aalto University, and I don't think, neither of us thought that I would get in. So then when I got in and it actually came time to move, he actually didn't want to come to Finland. We had a very good life in the U.S., and I think I was maybe going through a quarter-life crisis, like, okay, I was 29 at the time, we can either get married and buy a house and have babies, which are sort of like the next big life thing you think about, or at least that all our friends were thinking about doing, or we could move to another country and have an adventure. And we're very lucky that, you know, for us, migration was a choice, and we're very lucky that we could come to a country that had, you know, that has welcomed us in most ways with open arms, and where he's a citizen, so it's been very smooth for us to live here. So that's why we came in 2000, almost exactly 8 years ago, so 2016. The plan was to come just for 2 years, so I could get the master's degree, but we're still here.
So I suppose you like it here. You do?
Yeah, more and more every year.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was sort of a slow start for us. I don't know if I already said this to you in, you know, off air, but I often say that I have lived in other cities and other countries where it feels like a passionate love affair, like where I fall in love with the place immediately and I'm head over heels and I just, like, my whole being goes into this place. But then those places, like passionate love affairs, also burned out rather quickly. Or you know, they exhausted me rather quickly because there was so much going on, such intensity socially and culturally and linguistically. And then coming to Finland, it was a much quieter start, which at first I mistook for boring, but now I understand for calm and peaceful and faithful. Like, as opposed to the passionate love affair, I feel like I've been married to Finland for 50 years and we just hold hands and walk quietly. And I love that more and more about Finland, that this is a wonderful place to live. And you know, the last 8 years have been very intense, no matter what country you live in, with politics and pandemic. But Finland seems to weather those storms much better than, for example, the United States has. So I think for many reasons, we're very happy to be in Finland right now.
Well, I'm so happy to hear it. We Finns, we always want to know, and when we meet a foreigner, we want to know, what do you think about Finland? How do you feel it here? What are the Finns like? We are so curious to know, and that's why I asked you this question. And I'm happy to hear your answer. But
I mean, of course, I do have to say I see everything through rose-tinted glasses at the moment. It's July. We're wearing summer outfits. My feelings are always a bit grimmer about Finland in, say, November. But I think that's true for everybody.
Exactly. It's true for many Finns too.
How do you do with the seasonal changes?
We are so used to it. Since babies, we are used to having 4 seasons. But nowadays, I think the seasons have become a little mixed. They are not so clearly 4. They are maybe even only 3. Because sometimes the winter is very short. Not always, but sometimes. Then you have a long autumn, and then you suddenly jump into spring, which is also very short. And then summer is getting longer. So it's becoming a little changed. And that must be because of the climate change. But who knows? Maybe some other factors too. By the way, they said this year was it day before yesterday or Sunday or someday, they had measured the highest temperatures all over the world when you sum it all up. Ever since man has had the machines to measure the temperature. So it was the highest ever. It was about 17, the mediate.
Here in Finland,
no,
or globally?
all over, globally, all over the world.
Wow.
It's, well, we have to do something to stop it, but it's a little worrying.
It is.
But I think whenever you're doing a work with good heart and good intention, you are doing something for the people and even for the whole world, because it gets by you. If you do something good, then some person comes in and starts to do the same. Then she kind of makes it all around her. The good waves, they reach other people near him or her.
The good ripple effect.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's something I think is the strongest way to have to influence anything. If you can't go to politics, you don't want to be public. You just want to do everything among the nearest persons around you, and that's the best way to do. You want to do something good, and they see it, and maybe they will join you. Anyway, it will have an effect on them in one way or another. Yeah, I believe in that.
I do too, and I think this has been a very underpinning philosophy of flower rescue, that we live in a time where the problems are very big and very complicated, and of course the sustainability issues in the floral industry are very niche, but they're the same kinds of issues that affect almost every consumer good we buy these days, and this philosophy of taking small incremental steps toward big goals, I think, is a very important one. I read an interesting article this morning, or kind of just an opinion piece this morning by a Finnish startup entrepreneur I really admire, who runs this company called the Upright Project, and they're building an artificial intelligence model to help companies really understand what their real impact is, so that eventually, hopefully, the incentives for doing business will switch towards doing business the right way. But this opinion piece was a bit critical of this sort of incremental, taking small incremental steps attitude. And I think the critique came from the fact that many, well, at least businesses, at least the big ones, take those small steps and then broadcast them as if they're very, very big steps and very big changes. And I think that's where the danger is, right? To think that, okay, I recycle, well, at an individual level, okay, I recycle my plastic. Okay, I can give myself a pat on the back. I'm doing sustainable. That's a piece of it, but that can't be the end game. And I think I've been thinking about this today because we always say at Flower Rescue, and this was a tagline that one of our early members gave us, that, you know, start small but start somewhere, which is important because it can get so easy to get frozen in indecision, whether it's sustainability issues or social issues these days, to go, oh my gosh, where do we start? The problems are so big. And as you say, if we figure out what our areas of influence are and really do our best to do right and do well in those areas, then it does have a ripple effect. But what we can't let ourselves do, and what I was thinking about after reading this article this morning, is going, okay, we're doing this little bit, that's enough. You know, I think that's kind of a false assumption. So at Flower Rescue, we're also constantly trying to ask, okay, but what makes the real change? For example, globally, what they say about flower waste is that something like 40% of what gets grown, of the flowers that get grown for commercial consumption, will get thrown away before they reach the end consumer, which is an astonishing percentage if you think about the fact that this is just a luxury. Of course, you and I think flowers are necessary, but when it comes to, you know, food and shelter and basic needs, these are a luxury. And over the last, well, so that 40%, of course, occurs all across the flower supply chain. It occurs in production if they don't meet basic quality standards. It occurs through transportation when these flowers are being transported great distances. It occurs at the auctions and at the wholesale level. And it also occurs at your local flower shop. It doesn't mean that they're wasting nearly 40% of their stock. It's probably closer to 10%, depending on the florist. But if we take that 40% estimate and we take what we've heard from local flower shops and retailers, that their waste is between 2 and 20% maybe. And if we look at the import statistics of flowers, because of course most flowers that we buy in Finland are imported, including these lovely roses you have on the table. My guess is that in Helsinki every year there are something like 500,000 rescuable flowers. That doesn't mean flowers getting thrown away before consumers, but if you take some small percentage of what's going to waste and imagine that not all of those really are waste. Anyway, I'm getting convoluted here, but we think there's about 500,000 rescuable flowers just in Helsinki every year. And last year we rescued, I think, just under 65,000 of those flowers, which we're very proud of. I mean, that's a lot more than we'd ever rescued in a single year before, but that's still, you know, just over 10% of what we think could be rescued in Finland every year. And so what we're trying to, like with the Flower Rescue Board of Directors, for example, and Johanna and me, is back to this conversation about incremental steps and small actions. Like, it is important that we're rescuing these flowers, and it is important that we're building community and doing good in the community with these flowers. But I don't think we can just pat ourselves on the back and say, great, 65,000 flowers rescued, because if in our local area only there are 500,000, how do we get to that number? But I think working in a community like this and being part of a small but growing movement in Finland that is trying to bring more sustainability to the flower industry does help me see that we can make a difference.
Of course,
yeah.
I think so too. And it would be like stopping halfway if you stop at the points as you explained. But you have to go on.
You have to go on.
It's the same in any business, but especially here.
Well, true. But I guess that's actually what this opinion piece was calling out, is that if in any other measure of business success you were stopping halfway, that nobody would accept that.
Yeah,
so why do we
true.
accept it when it comes
Of
to
course.
sustainability?
Yes, but this area is so new that people have to get used to it. And that's where we have to be strict. We have to demand our right to continue. Of course, you get obstacles. People are against it. But if there are many people going this way, then they have to accept it. They have to say, okay, there is something in this. And because we all have to do something anyway. So why not start or continue here? But there's one question that popped into my mind. I know that you've been to many countries. You've even lived in many different countries. How do you find it here in Finland? How does the flower business, how is it organized? Is it easy for you to get these rescue flowers?
Well, I mean, I can't say I know the whole flower industry in Finland. I'm learning as much as I can. In terms of how easy it is to get these rescue flowers, it's both easy and difficult. I mean, because we started when I was working at this Kukatukku, that was, quite an easy source, because, we had the relationship with this flower wholesaler, and they were and they continue to be a really key partner and supportive partner for flower rescue. So these days, about 80% of the flowers that we're rescuing are coming from this wholesaler. Developing relationships with other flower businesses to try to identify and rescue their waste has been a little slower to start. Like small flower shops, for example, at least in the beginning, didn't really want to give up their flower waste or admit that they had very much. But that was back in 2018, and I think those small flower shops are now quite keen. I mean, of course, they have a lot of, any florist has a lot of practices to reduce their waste in the first place, but they now also have tools like the Rescue Club app to sell, flowers that might otherwise go to waste, sort of like if they're getting a new shipment of roses tomorrow and they have a few old roses from last week, they can now sell those on the Rescue Club app. But for flower rescue, in terms of sourcing these flowers, we do have relationships with some florists who donate not so much like the stock they have in their stores, but after events, for example, like weddings and corporate events, a lot of those flowers get thrown away if they're not taken home with guests. So we're trying to develop relationships and logistics that we could rescue those flowers. And then also we're trying to develop relationships with some of the big flower, like other big flower centers, like wholesalers, or, like the big packing centers for all the grocery business or for Plantagen. And we have some relationships there, others are slower to build. I mean, I think a problem when you're working with waste is that it is often not in a company's best interest to admit that they have the waste in the first place. So then, we come in and go, hey, we can do good things with your waste, but they don't necessarily want to tell their customers or communities that they have waste. But I think, I think this is all just a slow process. And another thing that we're trying to do now is, rather than flower rescue centrally rescuing everything, like our model right now is quite central. Like we collect flowers, actually, and we're able to do that more these days because we got a great sponsorship from Nissan last year. So we have a little flower van that we can drive around and collect these flowers. And then we bring them back, and then we sort them, and then we take them back out. But that becomes not very efficient if you're talking about small amounts of waste from different grocery stores around town, for example. So what we're trying to do this year is pilot a program that will connect local charities or care homes with local volunteers and local flower sources, like, say, the neighborhood Alepa, which probably doesn't have a lot of flower. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say brand names here, but, the neighborhood grocery store, which may not have huge quantities of flower waste, but may have a few bouquets a week.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out a way to create little networks of, like I said, local volunteers, local flower sources, and local charities or care homes or community centers who could use that flower waste. So I think it's, the question is not so much how do we get enough flowers. It's more like where we'd like Flower Rescue to go is to become a good a good platform where anybody anywhere could, or where we can help anybody anywhere identify and repurpose flower waste.
Yes, I think when people get used to this idea of waste flowers, there might even be flower sellers who could divide their flowers. That would be the best flowers ever, and then a second sort of place where you could find rescue flowers and you could get them cheaper. I think many people might be very interested in it because we know that flowers don't last so long, and if you get good flowers with less price, why not?
Well, and in fact, a lot of the flower shops are doing that these days. They might have, like, on Fridays, their rescue bouquets where they've put the older flowers together, and you can buy those more cheaply. Or, like I said before, through this Rescue Club app.
Yes.
So I think this is, and I think this is really great. Yeah, also for consumers, that especially if you don't need your flowers to be perfect quality for weeks and weeks, then you're happy to buy something that might otherwise go to waste.
Yeah, well, that's a good direction, I think.
Well, and that will, like I said in the beginning, the goal is to reduce the waste from happening in the pre-consumer waste from happening in the first place. So if consumers are given a chance to buy these older flowers, that's a great way to prevent the waste from happening.
Yes, that's a good goal to aim at. I was wondering, when you are doing this flower business now, it is a business, I think, because you're so active in it. I mean, business in a way of being a great activity or taking a lot of your time. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, it's my full-time job these days.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I once visited your place, and I saw all the flowers so much, and I thought, oh, this is just the tiny little beginning of all the flowers going waste. And it's such a shame, I think. And I'm also a flower lover. I've always been since a little girl. I remember looking at the flowers in the nature, and I always paid attention to their colors. My favorite color was yellow and orange, and I even found flowers where these colors were combined, and they stayed in my mind, and I always remember them, and still they are something special. And yes, I have some favorite flowers, and I think maybe you too. Can you tell me some of them? Can you list me?
Well, sure, but will you tell me yours first?
Okay. I've
in Finnish is good too. Yeah.
Okay, I know these in English, as I've told you before. When we met last time, I told you I love daffodils. They are yellow, they are so open. And then there is also this little fringe or line, like a red, and it's open, and it's a positive flower. It's open, and it's like calling, come here, take me. It's poetic even, and that's why I like it so much. But they are so hard to get here. They are, and I think people should demand them, at least at Easter time, because they're so hard to find. And then of course, I also like tulips, and I like yellow roses, and then some specific. There is a flower called ailakki, which for some reason is very close to me. I like it.
I think I can imagine why you like that one.
Yes. We have many flowers, by the way, which are named after persons, or the other way round, I think. Orvokki, kielo.
Malva.
Yes, for anything.
Yeah.
Ailakki, yes, and so on. And then I also like blue orvokki. I don't know orvokki in English.
Yeah, I can picture the flower, but of course the English isn't coming
it's
to me
very
right now.
small and delicate.
I think the little violets or pansies. I think in American English we call them pansies.
Pansies, okay.
Yeah.
They are like a lilac, lilac, and then there's slight yellow in the middle.
Yellow in the middle.
Yes, and they're very short grown, and they are in bunches.
And they grow. They even grow in the rocks here, don't they? In the springtime.
Yes, maybe. Yes, and there are different types of them, many colors. They're also red and white, and some people place them in the balconies, and they look nice. Well, flowers are so nice and beautiful. And how about? Do you like flowers at home? When you work with them all the time, do you also bring them at home?
I do, yeah. I mean, of course, I have lots of green plants at home. There's now a rule in my house because we have so many green plants that my boyfriend imposed a rule that no more green plants can go in until one goes out. Yeah, when it comes to having flowers at home, I love to have them. But I always have to clean the house before I can put put nice new flowers in the vase. Like
really?
I feel like I have to give them the nicest environment.
Oh, your relationship to them is almost as if they were a person.
Yeah, like I want them. I don't want them to sit on a dusty table. Like I'm not a great housekeeper. The house is usually, it's not terribly messy, but it's not always super tidy, and so it's always good incentive to clean the house when I'm bringing flowers home. I have noticed that because we do work with such big volumes of flowers at Flower Rescue, that sometimes at the end of the week, I just want, a small vase with 1 or 2 stems of flowers. I think maybe I have become more of a flower minimalist. And my favorite flowers to have at home are usually whatever's in season. I think also thinking about flowers from the sustainability angle, I have become a big proponent of buying flowers seasonally. Like, I know it frustrates you that daffodils are only available certain times of the year, but I take that as a very good sign that maybe we're respecting the more natural pace of things since we're only buying them in the springtime. So of course right now I'm excited to have like a sunflower on the table or a dahlia or these really special seasonal flowers. But my all-time favorites, of course, which you have on the table right now, are roses. And you said you like the daffodils because they're open and friendly, and I like the roses because they're beautiful and bitchy. Like, they're beautiful, but with their thorns, they're like, I'm not going to make it easy for you.
Yes. We have a saying in Finnish that, well, I can say it in Finnish.
Let's see if I understand.
Yes, you will. Kauneimmankin ruusun alla piilee piikkipistävä. However beautiful the rose is, there is always a very not so nice thing which sticks you.
Yeah, the thorn. There's always a thorn to poke you.
Okay, yes.
But I mean, I feel like that's so well. As a woman raised in Western culture where girls are supposed to be, only sweet and ladylike, and I'm trying to unlearn that these days. So I appreciate that the roses can be beautiful, but also have these thorns. But I also think that's a good, parallel to life. Like, a lot of what we've been talking today is these, okay, we have these huge problems but we as individuals are in charge of small solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a rose is, also possesses these these paradoxes, that they're beautiful, there's these symbols of elegance and romance, but it's not all sweet.
Yes, it is a symbol of life.
Yeah.
And when they are not just sweet, then it resembles life. And if life was just sweet, it wouldn't feel sweet. We have to have the contrast. There's always something not so good, and then you get something very good, and you get high feelings, and you're feeling so great. And then again, something not so good happens, and then you go down. And when you're down that there's going to be a better day.
Especially if someone brings you flowers.
Especially then, yes. And it is a small thing, in fact, but it can be very great for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
It can be the best thing ever happened that day or that week.
Mm-hmm.
Like some person coming to visit you. It can lighten up the whole day.
It really can, yeah.
And when you're doing this activity for persons who are unable, who can't go out so easily, and who have very few guests, then you're doing a great thing. They are so delighted, I'm sure. And when I'm visually handicapped and I can see 10%, so I can see these flowers, which is a great thing, and I'm really grateful for that. It's a pleasure, and I really appreciate it. And so whenever you came to us and Johanna started to explain the flower things and how to make a good bunch of flowers, I was immediately interested in it, and I knew beforehand that I would be. And I thought, oh, this is something for me. This is really something I want to learn. I have tried to make nice bouquets before, but I never knew the first step things at all. So now I'm learning them little by little.
Little by little, yeah.
Yes, and I'm very happy to be in it, to join this activity. I'm not often very interested in other things, in other activities, but when there is a good cause, of course I want to be in it. I want to join in, simply. It's as simple as that. There is no doubt about it. And then meeting two nice people like you and Johanna, I thought, oh, this is something. This is something I want to join in. And so here I am. I want to be Kukkakeijo. It's a beautiful name. I'm always telling my friends, do you know I'm a Kukkakeijo nowadays? And I expect they would be really happy and pleased to hear it, but they just say, oh, I see. What does that mean? But you're an adult, Ayla. Are you really thinking of being a keijo? And I say, of course I am. I never was a keijo, so now it's the time to be a keijo.
Well, and we're so happy to have you as a Kukkakeijo. I mean, I think we chose that name for the volunteers who help with the rescue flower workshops at our different partner sites, because it sounds so nice, but also because it was so whimsical and maybe a little bit silly. But if you can't be a little whimsical and silly, then what's the point? And yeah, we're so lucky to have you as a Kukkakeijo, and to have this really beautiful community of flower lovers who also are concerned about these sustainability challenges in flowers, but in our world in general, and who also want to do good things for the community. And I think that's another hope for Flower Rescue, is that this can really be a win-win, that somebody can, like, for example, before I came here today, one of the partners, this Roihuvuori Seniorikeskus, hosted a flower workshop, and there were, I think, 8 women who attended. Of course, the flowers always seem to be so attractive to the women, ladies, older ladies, retired ladies, but who live in the neighborhood, and who like to come to activities at the senior center. And the kulttuuriohjaaja who was hosting, she said, okay, well, why doesn't each of you make a bouquet to take home? And then with the rest of the flowers, we'll make bouquets to cheer up the residents at the care home here.
Mm-hmm.
And one lady, they were making bouquets for 30 minutes or so, and she made some lovely bouquets for herself, and then also some lovely ones to leave. And then at the end she said, oh yes, well, yesterday was my birthday, and this is such a nice way to celebrate. And that just really struck me as so lovely, because how nice that she came to do a generous activity for someone else on her birthday. But isn't that also what we're all looking for when it comes to community and connection, is a chance to feel good ourselves, but also feel like we have something to offer. And that's, I think that's what we've realized is so powerful about these flower workshops. Often our workshops are trying to bring joy to the people who attend, but there's also often this sort of donation component to bring flowers to people who might not otherwise get to enjoy them. And it feels so good to do good. And it makes us feel connected. And I think that's another challenge we have in modern society, is a lack of meaningful connection. I think we're all over-connected in some ways, or overexposed in some ways, but don't get to have a lot of moments of positive, genuine connection.
Yes, and I noticed when I worked with people there, with visually handicapped people, it's so easy to get into contact. You start talking naturally.
Yes.
There is no obstacle. You just start talking. And in the end, I noticed that the most important thing, of course, flowers, but also the contact, to have somebody to talk to. And they would talk about anything, their lives, their past, their present day activities, anything.
What do you think it is about flowers that makes it so easy to talk when you're working with flowers together?
I think, well, first thing that comes to my mind is that everybody knows them. And the people, actually, whom I was supposed to teach, they knew much more about flowers than I did. And that's one thing I'm a little afraid of. They always know better than I do, and they also know the names of the flowers, and I'm in difficulties then. But anyway, then I started to somehow to describe the flowers, and it brought some memories to their minds. They had all had things they had been doing with flowers when they were children, when they were young, and that's why they knew the names. And it was something that connected all us, the young and the old. So that's one thing. Flowers connect us.
They really do. Because you're so right that everybody, no matter your age, no matter your cultural history, has a flower story. Even if they don't think of themselves as flower people. I mean, of course, most people who find their way to a flower rescue activity will proudly say that they love flowers. But, we meet twice a week with community volunteers to rescue the flowers. And I think since we started, something like over 600 people have come to rescue these flowers. Quite a mix of people born in Finland and people with international backgrounds. And everybody has a flower story to tell, no matter what culture they come from, no matter, the flowers have they symbolize different things in different cultures, but everybody's got a flower story to tell. Even the, reluctant boyfriend who gets dragged along to volunteer, who says, oh, well, I don't really like flowers, but yeah, my mom had a really beautiful flower garden, and oh gosh, we had some great evenings in that garden with my family. So that this just to say, you're exactly right, that flowers, they connect us.
Yes, and there are different aspects to flowers. There's first thing the physical flower, what does it look like? And then there are the colors. I'm very interested in the colors. And if you are blind, you can't see the colors, but if you have once seen in the past, you can imagine them very easily.
Mm-hmm.
And then, even if you're blind, you've always been blind, you can also make beautiful bouquets. That's fantastic.
I had thank you for teaching us that, you know, that, because I think dominant flower culture is so focused on the visual that it's easy as a seeing person to forget how much more there is to a flower than just the visual. These are so multisensory. There's
you can
the texture,
touch,
there's
yes,
the weight, there's the thickness of the petal, there's the smell.
Some of them feel like velvet,
Yes.
and some others are very thin, and you shouldn't press them or they break. And then they open and they close. You can feel if there's only if it's already full open, or if it's still sleeping, the small flower. And then, of course, you have to take care of them. You have to water them. You can spray some water. They love it, and they become so fresh. And then there are little points of water there on the little bubbles,
little
drops of water. And then in the morning, when you go to the field, you can feel the little drops under your feet. If you're barefooted, you can feel how the field is waking up. And then there are also flowers and all the butterflies flying around the flowers, and the bees and everything. And there are so many things. And flowers, of course, they bring summer to your mind. Even if it's winter, it brings a tiny bit of summer to your home.
Well, and even in, I have talked to many people who live in, or, who were born in places that maybe don't have 4 seasons. And there may be flowers blooming all the time, but there might be flowers blooming at different times of the year, or flowers that are for different kinds of ceremonies. That they bring with us these, or they bring to us these really specific associations.
They do. And we have special flowers for special occasions, of course, for for good or for bad. And they are, and also personal preferences. People say, oh, I would like to have this and this flower on that occasion. So
yeah, we learned, because we're serving a lot of senior audience through Flower Rescue, and we learned that one no is you can use almost any flower, people have said, except very smelly lilies. Oftentimes people don't want to receive those because the smell is too strong, or because they're used too often in funeral arrangements. But another thing we learned is that if you're making a bouquet to donate to a senior home, that it shouldn't only be white and green, because that also has a very funerary implication.
Yes, I know. I've heard it. People say.
That's what I've learned.
People say so. But also the smell is important, because some people can't bear the smell. They get allergic symptoms. They can't bear it. And then there are others who can differentiate the different smells so well. I myself, I can't smell them at all. This may be a surprise to you. Yeah. It's a long story, but to make it short, I cannot smell them. But maybe sometimes, if the smell is very strong, I can feel it.
You can feel it.
Yes, but it doesn't matter. I can see them. I can still see them.
Working with flowers, especially rescuing flowers so much, has heightened my sense of smell. Of course, when we're rescuing them, what we're doing is taking these Haviki flowers, these waste flowers, and trying to figure out what we think will last for a couple of days, to still bring joy for a few days. And so what we're doing is just carefully looking at the quality of the flower to figure out, okay, is this, some of them are very obviously bad today, like if there's mold or something like that. But others, it can be a little harder to tell, okay, will this last a day or a few days?
Mm-hmm.
And I have come to rely, I mean, we look at a lot of visual cues, but I have also come to rely on how the flowers smell to figure out how old they feel and how, I mean, of course, my nose is not a finely tuned instrument, but it's surprised me working with flowers how certainly my visual attention span has been extended working with flowers, but my other senses too.
Yes, and if there is a person who has one or another sense is not as good anymore, then you might even ask him or her to somehow to try to guess what flower is this, just by touching and smelling. And this might be very nice, because I've noticed the blind people, at least, they love quizzes. They love questioning them, and they are always there.
It's like a puzzle.
Yes, it's like a puzzle. And then you could give them maybe 4 or 5 flowers and then say, okay, can you guess what is this flower? And then the person who can tell best is the winner. And just one hint for you.
See, it's playful. It's fun. I mean, there's also these therapeutic implications of flowers, and not only the feel, the feel good implication, but one thing that we're really interested in actually trying to develop some research partnerships around is what kind of emotional therapeutic benefits could the flowers have, but also like physically therapeutic benefits. Like some of our partners, for example, like a physical therapist we've heard that they might work on, grip strength with their clients while making bouquets. For example, if someone had suffered a stroke and is trying to get some mobility or strength back in their hands, that actually, it can be very tedious and repetitive to do these grip exercises, and that it's a little more fun if you're practicing, or I think what you were just talking about sort of gamifying this flower identification too, because the flowers do help you kind of focus in on these different sensory challenges. So that's something that we would like to do in the future, is work with different kinds of therapists to see what kind of benefits and even methodologies could be developed around the flowers.
They are so positive.
Yeah.
They bring up so positive feelings. Anything. And I think if you start thinking about it, there will be many more aspects.
Exactly. Well, this green therapy / nature therapy is getting a lot of attention these days. Have you heard about that discipline? That there's a lot of like from art therapists to psychological therapists working on natural interventions in their therapeutic practices to help people reconnect to nature. And I think the flowers could also be incorporated in those kinds of activities.
Yes, and it's a good reason to do something. If your hands are not working properly and then you're doing something with flowers, there is a reason. It's not just some physical exercise.
Exactly.
There is something and then there's the ready product, the finished product, which is the prize for doing it. And it's not just doing some exercise, nothing.
It's not just going through the motions.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's
a reward at the end. Yeah.
Yes, there's a reward, and there is emotion attached to it. Then it's always better. Like they say, if you remember something, you always have some other element, like a smell or a touch, which enables you to remember it better.
Yes.
When it's connected to some other sense. Yes. So it's not just a memory. It's a memory. It's a whole bunch of memories combined together. You can smell the air. Maybe it was cold. Then you can smell the flower. It was that flower. And then you can feel, it was like that. I was feeling a little
Mm-hmm.
down. And there are so many things which are connected to
Which are
that memory.
connected.
And that's why you remember it so well. If there is no other sense, it can easily be forgotten.
I have heard that the part of our brain that appreciates music isn't as susceptible to memory disorders as other things. Like, for example, when my grandmother was, she had dementia in her old age, but she recognized and loved her favorite music.
Yes.
And I have no, again, scientific proof of this, but I suspect that flowers are the same way, because we're working with a lot of older folks and a lot of memory care partners, and there have been many workshops where people who are, in quite advanced Alzheimer's or dementia or other memory disorders will start talking about flower memories.
Yes.
And I think that's really powerful, and I think that must be somehow attached to what you're saying, that and maybe it's because flowers are so multisensory that we anchor them that they anchor memories very strongly. Of course, again, I don't have any scientific training to discuss this, but this is another thing that we'd like to research, because we've seen it enough that somebody who doesn't seem to possess as many of their memories, or at least isn't verbally sharing them, will start talking about flower memories. Which is why, funnily, my flower memory vocabulary is my best Finnish vocabulary.
Really?
Like, I still can't speak very well, but I can listen to conversations about, my mother's garden when I was a child, or my wedding bouquet had these flowers, or those conversations I understand quite well in Finnish.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Very good. Sounds great. I'm so happy you came to visit me here and gave me a lovely interview.
Thank you.
Really, I enjoyed it.
I think we could talk all day about flowers, couldn't we?
I agree. I totally agree. But now I think it's time to stop here, and maybe we will continue this discussion one day. At least we will meet again soon.
We will. Thank you, Ayla.
Thank you, Katie. And listeners, I'm very happy to have had you, and I'm going to make another interview in the near future. So thank you all. Bye-bye.